Fatherlessness is the biggest problem of the world. That's a massive statement. I don't know if you believe this, but the more you do research, the more you get convinced of this statement. To the point that a guy like Stephen Baskerville from the Howard University says the following: virtually every major social pathology has been linked to fatherlessness. Violent crime, drug and alcohol abuse, teen pregnancy, suicide, all correlate more strongly to fatherlessness than to any other single factor. And then if you find the statistics and read and compile it, then you understand we deal with an enormous problem here. That's why statistics show the following, that about 70% of juvenile in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes. 80% of all rapists come from fatherless homes. 85% of children with behavioral problems come from fatherless homes. And we can carry on and on and on. And if we just go to the statistics of what we have in marriage, we see a massive family implosion in this world. There are countries that they say that even up to 78% of divorce happening in those countries, leaving the children fatherless. There are countries, for instance, like the island of the Seychelles, where they say that 90% of all children are born outside wedlock. Statistic upon statistic convince us that we deal with a massive problem here. Now the big question is this: what is the influence of the absence of a father on a child? And obviously absence can come from things like divorce or migrant work or things like this, but it also can come from just the pure neglect of a father to his children. Comes home and keeps himself occupied with his own things, not considering his children at all. What would be the impact on children if the fathers would not play their God-given responsibility back home? A person consists of 6 dimensions. And as these 6 dimensions make up the human being, we got to look at each of these dimensions of the human being to see what the influence of the absence of the father would be. So if we look, for instance, at the emotional impact of the absence of the fathers, then a very brilliant research has taught us a lot concerning that. It's called the FIRA research, the Father Involvement Research Alliance, from the Guelph University. And that was made in 2007, where they summarized basically 150 master and PhD degrees to come up with phenomenal research results, telling us the impact on the emotional side of a young person if the father is absent, telling us the impact on the social side of a person if the father is absent. You can talk to many people that study emotional intelligence. And Warren Bennis, for instance, has written a significant book on this to tell us how essential emotional intelligence is in the development of a person as it is in the development of a leader. And you will see where the fathers are absent, the emotional impact is sometimes really enormous, which makes it very difficult for them to cope when they come into their teenage years, and the social formation is important in the teenage years. And all of these have a role to play in success later on in marriage and in life, whatever the responsibility in life is. So you see the emotional impact on children. You see the social impact on children. You see even the intellectual impact on children. The research tells the following and says that people are more competent intellectually later on when fathers are involved than those that do not have the involved fathers. They test higher on emotional intelligence in many cases. And you can understand this when you talk to specialists and they say that 80% of your intellectual capacity is formed in the first 6 years of your life, and that the secure emotional environment has got a lot to do with that. And on top of that, even the way that fathers talk to children helps, because the fathers ask different questions according to the research to the children, the where and how and why questions, which creates the children to find more logical reasoning and answers, and therefore an extended vocabulary also in the process of trying to find answers on the questions of the fathers. So you have the emotional impact, you have the social impact, you have the intellectual impact, you have the physical impact even. We see that infant mortality is higher with places where there are single parents, for instance. We see that a very much higher percentage of children dealing with the problem of asthma comes from the fact of the absence of the father. talking to a professor on this issue, he says to me that more than 70% of all the physiological problems of people come from three things: guilt, shame, and fear. And once you hear this, you understand that in the absence of the Father, a lot of this can just occupy the life of a young person and become a trigger for physical problems later on in life. The spiritual impact on children is obviously the biggest issue that we want to deal with. And therefore we see that if the fathers are absent, there are definitely a void that children search for, that something about God's presence that they desire. There is a lovely story related to that, of a little boy that went to bed one night, and then he had a nightmare, but his father was there watching him struggling in this nightmare, and he was standing in the room actually, and then at a stage the little boy just cried out from his dream, "Daddy, help! Daddy, come! Daddy, help! Daddy, come!" And then his father answered him, standing there in the corner of the room, looking down on him. And his father answered him and he said, "My boy, don't worry. God is here and God will take care of you." His father wanted to console him, but this little boy answered his father, "Yes, Dad, I know that God is here. But right now, I need a God with skin on." And this is what our children need. A God with skin on. God has called our fathers to be Him with skin on, so that we can create wholeness and not have a person with one dimension in his life broken, shattered, wounded, with all the insecurities that develop in life later on, but that all the dimensions of life, emotional, social, physical, intellectual, the environment itself, and spiritual, that all the dimensions of life will be whole, developed in the right way to give your child the best opportunity in life. We are called to bring shalom. Oh no, we call it with a different name in Africa. To bring Ubuntu, wholeness, to our children in Africa and beyond. This is what a father is called for.